What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Earlier this year, a raw and personal narrative from Jianwei, a former soldier of China's People's Liberation Army (PLA), who became a mercenary fighting for Russia. This video emerged online. His revelations about the brutal conditions on the front lines provide a unique and a very fresh perspective on the conflict. This is a real story, not Russian propaganda, which is extremely selective about the soldiers they interview and very meticulous about editing out the wrong responses. No, this is a story of an actual soldier fighting among Russian ranks from the perspective of a mercenary, which means he went there willingly, thinking he is fighting for the right cause and also making money along the way. And as time passed, he became more and more convinced that he ended up in a real hell, full of lies, unfulfilled promises, life-threatening responsibilities, and total ignorance and incompetence of the Russian commanders and the regime of Putin in general. This experience was a huge eye-opener for Jianwei, and this video is perfect for both sides of the conflict, those who oppose Putin and his supporters. It brings so many fresh perspectives into the conflict, so today, guys, let's talk about the main points of this Li's confession. Jianwei's journey from Zhengzhou, Henan province to the battlefields of Ukraine is a story in itself. Having served 2 years in the People's Liberation Army, Li realized that this is his relatively familiar and enjoyable, if you can call it this way, line of business. Russia and China are also close partners, and even though there is no direct signs of support from China, its people do feel more favorable towards Russians rather than Ukrainians. That is why it was almost a perfect opportunity for Li to sign a contract with the Russian military and fight on the side he thought was good and inevitably going to win. And Putin only welcomes people like this. This allows his regime to fight his war with the hands of other countries' representatives, and then use them in propaganda, claiming that Russia has a wide support around the world. And at the same time, the use of mercenaries, paramilitary groups and private military companies is also a good way for Putin to extract the best and ignore the worst of any war. If they're able to achieve significant progress, Putin claims this as a success of the Russian military. And if they fail miserably, such event can be ignored completely or blamed on sole responsibility of the mercenaries, saying that no Russian soldier was involved or harmed in the process. This idea is going to be crucial as we go along with the video, so guys, please keep this one in mind. The recruitment of foreign nationals like Li represents an expansion of Russia's military strategy. By enlisting mercenaries from countries such as China, North Korea, African countries, and even individuals from Nepal and Cuba, Russia is signaling a willingness to internationalize its military efforts. One of the reasons for this is the attempt by Putin to involve more countries to share Russia's blame, in case things inevitably go wrong. Putin then will hold accountable other countries, saying that their soldiers were fighting as well. So it is not only Russia who is bad here. After all, please remember that the Soviet mindset, which is still extremely dominant inside the heads of current Russian leaders, is very proficient at shifting the blame and finding and punishing those responsible. And another reason of mercenaries' involvement is to avoid the domestic backlash that a potential general mobilization can initiate. It also reflects potential shortages within Russia's own military resources, needing external reinforcement. The presence of Chinese mercenaries raises questions about the motivations and backgrounds of these fighters. For Li, his prior military experience did not fully prepare him for the realities of urban warfare in Ukraine. The diverse composition of mercenary units, combining veterans with inexperienced recruits, creates challenges in coordination and effectiveness on the battlefield. Don't forget about the language barrier as well. It is extremely hard for me sometimes to talk about military topics using appropriate vocabulary with my level of English, and now imagine those coming from distant Siberian regions, trying to understand a person, giving them military orders, and explaining the tactics in literal Chinese. And this is not a school exam, you don't fail or pass. You either survive or you die. Li's first-hand experience offers a vivid description of the physical and psychological toll inflicted by the war. He speaks of severe health issues, including the lack of proper nutrition and medical care, leading to conditions like unnecessarily prolonged constipations and hemorrhaging. These personal struggles are a sign of systemic problems within the military operations, where basic needs are unmet and soldiers are left to take care of themselves under extreme stress. As a result, even a minor injury can lead to an infection, as it usually does, taking the soldier out of the combat temporarily or even permanently. The fatality rates described by Lee are staggering. He notes that the new soldiers often survive only 8 to 10 hours upon entering combat zones. Imagine this, not 8-10 days. That's hours we're talking about. For example, you go to work in the morning, and by the time you finish, some soldiers who just arrived to their new base camp will be already eliminated. That's how absolutely incompetent some Russian commanders are, sending people who only know how to march and make their beds into literal meat assaults. The relentless street fighting, compounded by inexperience and inadequate equipment, results obviously in high casualties as well. It gets even worse when the fights happen inside the buildings. Experienced soldiers mention that such door-to-door experience is among the most complicated and scary ones. So what chances do amateurs have then? One particular incident that Jianwei went through involved a reconnaissance mission where Li and his small team faced drone attacks. The drones, as we already know, is a primary tool of modern warfare, at least for Ukrainians who rely on robots more and more, unlike Russian military that still thinks that most objectives can be solved with the help of humans. And if something happens, you can always just recruit more. This is one of the biggest differences that Lee mentions in his video, stating just how much Russia is behind in military strategy and how little do they care about their own soldiers. All the TV propaganda with soldiers being praised as semi-gods and promised the best lives possible after their service is over is just a complete lie. Russian soldiers quickly realized this as well, after spending a couple of weeks inside the trenches. There is a huge regret among vast majority of Russian fighters who did sign the contract, and most of them will not have done it if they could turn the time around. As a result, the psychological impact of such experiences cannot be overstated as well. Lee mentions that fear and desperation lead to instances of desertion and breakdowns among soldiers. His comrade under the nickname Little Black lacked prior combat experience and panicked during an engagement, fleeing the battlefield. Such incidents erode trust and camaraderie within the units, further undermining their effectiveness and morale. Lee's video also sheds light on several critical deficiencies in Russia's military strategy and logistics. The reliance on outdated and inferior equipment such as weak Polish-made mortars from the Soviet era places soldiers at a significant disadvantage. These weapons not only lack the necessary firepower, but also possess risks to those operating them due to their instability and obsolescence. The issue extends to broader shortage of modern equipment and supplies. Reports claim that Russia has been depleting its reserves of Soviet-era military vehicles and weapons, even resorting to repurchasing them back from other countries who they originally sold this equipment to. This depletion suggests an unsustainable approach to resource management and a potential underestimation of the conflict's duration and intensity. We did talk about this phenomenon in our previous videos, guys. Now it's just a real-life confirmation that indeed these things do happen. Lee then emphasizes on the lack of adequate training and preparation for the types of combat encountered. Many soldiers, including supposed veterans, are ill-equipped for urban warfare, leading to tactical failures and unnecessary losses. The strategy of mass assaults with insufficiently trained and poorly equipped troops results in minimal territorial gains at a high human cost, something that has been mentioned countless times before as well. Low morale among the troops is exaggerated by harsh conditions, lack of support, and unclear objectives. Instances of desertion reflect a huge difference between expectations and realities. Many thought of war as a romanticized activity, like sitting in a trench, sharing stories and having a good laugh with your comrades while having a hot meal, and just occasionally shooting a bullet or two now and then, and just one kind of big hiking/camping trip. But everything changes after one single battle. Soldiers faced not only the enemy, but also internal struggles with fear, hunger, and exhaustion. The absence of effective leadership and support mechanisms compounds these issues, leading to a cycle of declining performance and increasing casualties. A significant portion of Lee's video is dedicated to the use of drones by Ukrainian forces. He describes encounters with reconnaissance and combat drones, which have become a defining feature of the conflict. These drones conduct surveillance, direct artillery fire, and carry out precision strikes, creating a constant threat that leaves Russian soldiers with literally nowhere to hide. This is almost the entire quote from this guy's video. The mercenaries simply cannot understand why the Russian military cannot do the same. Every soldier sees how effective drones are to the modern warfare, and yet dozens of them are being sent into metasols to try and capture a single abandoned barn. And even if they do succeed, it takes just one Ukrainian drone to turn this barn, along with its inhabitants, into their final resting place. Ukraine's strategic emphasis on drone warfare is supported by domestic production capabilities and international assistance. The goal to deploy up to 1 million drones per year emphasizes the commitment to leveraging technology as a force multiplier. These drones disrupt traditional military tactics by rendering armored units and fortifications vulnerable, as they can be targeted swiftly and accurately without exposing personnel to direct combat. No wonder Russians have to come up with improvised defenses for their tanks, turning them into turtles just to protect themselves from the drones. Imagine this. The best-minded scientists and Russian engineers developed an active armor, just for it to be covered by metal sheets that soldiers stole from somebody's dacha. But that's what Russians have to do nevertheless. Millions of dollars are spent on research and development, and still these cannot protect the Russian military vehicles against $2,000 drone. Lee explains how Ukrainian drones, often flying in swarms, can also outmaneuver Russian attempts at electronic interference. This tactic is known to overwhelm Russian air defenses. When there is just so many flying objects on the radar at the same time, the system simply cannot process all of them and intercept at once. This is when a real missile or an armed drone is sent without the fear of being intercepted. And ultimately, remember, I ask you to keep in mind one of the reasons why Putin loves international fighters inside the Russian military. Well, when such failures of the army do happen, the interviews of survivors from defeated positions are usually ethical minorities or mercenaries. And while the propaganda does not directly blame them for the failures, by showing them over and over again, it creates the neural connection inside brainwashed Z-patriots that these foreign fighters are always the ones to blame, that the real Russian army is truly undefeatable, and once Putin unleashes the power of the military, Ukrainians will be crushed in a matter of days. But, as far as you can see, the real story, told by real participants from the Russian side, well, these stories tell absolutely the opposite thing. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow. We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.